So that's an allele, is a gene variant. In other words, a gene that is very similar to, but not identical to, another gene, which has a highly related or identical function, or at least function in determining, having to do with the development of a particular thing, feature. But when you turn these off, in natural reproduction, creating large populations automatically causes certain genes to become dominant and others to become recessive. When they become recessive enough, after enough generations, the gene is permanently turned off and the cell will never turn it back on again. It's just off. That means you've lost genetic information that was in the original that's no longer present. Imagine writing a book, and a lot of the sentences have, or it's a technical book. What you're going to end up with is a screwed up camshaft. And that's exactly what happens to biological life. When genes get turned off, you get screwed up organisms. And that's how we get a chihuahua, which is really a defunct genetic mutant of the highest order, a defunct, unhealthy, sort of worthless animal. I know they're good for ratters, you know, Mexicans use them for that. But I mean, the animals have tremendous number of health issues. They're missing hair that's supposed to be covering their entire body, some breeds. And they have deformities in their mouth and their muzzle, often heart defects constantly, because you keep turning off genes to get the thing. Yeah, you know, I mean, you can get the chihuahua, but you got to turn off so much information that what you get isn't very good, you know? Yeah, that's your friendly neighborhood mutation. All right. Yeah.
But it still baffles me though about that Indian baby who was born with a tail. Though it's, you know, do we actually have a genome in our human DNA that does say that we need a tail, or was that some sort of freakish protrusion of of the coccyx?
Yeah.
You know, maybe the baby's coccyx was just, you know, it just was protruding at birth and it grew extra skin. But I'm sure people would say, well, that's evolution. We're evolving into a species with a tail.
Yeah, if we're evolving, how come this? Dr. David Wake, paleontologist Dr. David Wake, stated almost 30 years ago, with natural selection operating in a changing environment as an agent of adaptation, we expect to see changes at the organismal, ultimately physiological and morphological level. How, though, can we explain the paradoxical situation in which environments change, even dramatically, but organisms do not? So, what he's finding is, in the fossil record of life, they find that organisms are buried in environments that doesn't seem natural for that organism. Now that's explained by the flood. You got massive amounts of water washing creatures all over across the earth, depositing some of them many miles away from where they were first picked up by the water. In other cases, burying them right where they stood. And so you got creatures moved off to another environment that doesn't even match that environment. And then the evolutionist digs them up because they believe in the flood. They believe that creature lived in that environment. They're stuck with it. Oh, this is where it lived. So it died right here where it lived, and its anatomy, its morphology, doesn't match its environment. How come natural selection didn't change it? See, that's one of the problems. That's from Dr. David Wake. He said this, I'll repeat it again. He said, with natural selection operating in changing environments as an agent of adaptation, we expect to see changes at the organismal, ultimately physiological and morphological level. How, though, can we explain the paradoxical situation in which environments change even dramatically, but organisms do not? I'll explain his error. His error is not accepting that the flood of Noah is what put that creature in that environment, because that's where it got buried. And it was in an environment that, looking at the materials of the strata, you're going to see an environment different from the kind of organism that you're digging up out of it. And that doesn't wash in your head. But it can be explained if that animal was picked up by floodwaters receding from the flood of Noah and moved 11 miles or 21 miles and buried in sediments 20, 30 miles away. Then you find a creature in an environment to which it's not perfectly suited. And you dig it up as an evolutionist years later and you think, this is weird. This creature can't live here. How come it didn't change? See? So their evolution theory, believing in evolution, causes problems for the secular camp.